Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to introduce Mr. Aloe Blacc. So you're back in Berlin. It's not your first time here, obviously. How long have you been coming here for, actually?
I've been coming to Berlin since 2002.
Wow. Okay. And other than the great weather that's here all the time, what is it that attracts you here, actually?
What attracted me here first was hip-hop. Started out as a hip-hop artist. In 1995, started making music with DJ Exile as a group called Emanon, and by 2002, I was able to save up enough money and just make my way to Europe. I was initially invited to do a 4-show tour around France. But there were some local LA hip-hop artists that were touring through Germany and other parts, and they had about 25 other dates. And one of their artists wasn't going to go on the tour, so there was an extra seat in the splitter van, and I'm talking like a 9-seat splitter van with no reclining chairs. And then there was one extra bed in on the hotels. So I asked them if I could join the tour, and they said, that's all right, but we can't pay you anything because you weren't scheduled to be in the economy of this tour. So I said, that's fine, I just need to get out there and share my music. Mm. And we had a fantastic, 25 or so city tour throughout Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and the 4 dates that I had in France. And when I got to Berlin, there was an organization called Sabotage, which is run by a lady named Karen Offenwanger here in Berlin, who basically programmed all of our tour throughout Europe. And she's still doing hip-hop tours to this day, and I consider her one of my most important resources in Europe from the beginning, because she really helped me develop a relationship in Berlin that has actually blossomed into other relationships that have in a large way supported my development in the music industry worldwide, because a lot of it stems from what happens in Germany.
That's great. I think the people here in Berlin have great taste, so I think it's worked out well. You mentioned you actually came from hip hop,
yeah.
And as we just heard, the music that you've been doing recently is not really hip hop. So actually, how did you even get into music in the first place?
My first experiences with music would be from my parents. My dad played the ukulele, so he'd always have his little 4-string ukulele, singing his calypso songs. And he had a great record collection and a great stereo with a sign on his stereo that says, "If you value your life, keep your hands off my stereo." I eventually inherited that stereo and did a lot of recording of radio shows on it. But in the early days, I found hip hop very soon because there were kids on my street that were breakdancing. And I would look out my door and I'd see them dancing. This is back in the mid-'80s, like 84 probably. And I wanted to go dance with them, so I would go outside, and I became part of the neighborhood b-boy crew. As a little kid, they called me Little Rock. And then I just kept in touch with hip-hop, getting as much of it as I could, from the movies to what was on the radio. And eventually, I started writing my own lyrics. By age 9, I was writing my own lyrics. I had this little notepad that would flip over and write what I could. But everything that I wrote sounded like LL Cool J. Maybe because my dad bought a LL Cool J tape early on, and I would just study everything, memorize it from back to front. It's not really the best material for a 9-year-old to be rapping about, but it was my training grounds. And a few years later, I met DJ Exile. He was in the neighborhood. He was looking for an MC to record with on his mixtape. And one of my friends said, you know, I'm not really a rapper, but I know this other kid who could really do it. You should meet him. And that was the way we met, at a restaurant in a parking lot after they kicked us out because they didn't want a bunch of rowdy hip-hop kids there. And he started beatboxing, and I started freestyling, and it was like perfect, a match, you know? So we went back and recorded a mixtape, and then from there, that was probably the most important meeting of my life, was meeting Exile in that parking lot.
And then the transition from hip-hop into more of a soul, kind of more of a deeper subjects, anything from, you know, I Need a Dollar to You Make Me Smile to Wake Me Up. How did that happen? How did your transformation happen from hip-hop to where you are today?
The transformation took a long time. I mean, I started working with Exile in '95, and I didn't stop working with Exile until 2005. So 10 years of hip-hop, and that's in the middle of school, and even from high school to university to corporate life. But throughout that time, hip-hop was changing. I mean, hip-hop started, for me, my favorite time was the '90s, the golden era, where there was so much diversity, so much creativity. Back then, being unique was the only way. And if you had any semblance of someone else's style, you were considered a biter. And biting wasn't a good thing. Biting is a very bad thing. You know, they say that, what do they say about mimicry or flattery? You know what the saying is?
Yeah, imitation is
imitation
the highest form of flattery.
Yeah. Not in hip-hop. Not in hip-hop. You don't imitate. But nowadays it seems like that's all that's happening. Like, it makes you cool to be able to do what someone else does. That's not the way I grew up. So everything had to be completely unique. And I started to feel like hip-hop was changing so much that nobody was unique anymore. Everybody was following something. And I realized that it was because of really the corporatization of hip-hop. They needed to make sure that it was predictable. They, meaning the people selling it, that it was predictable so that they can know what they're selling and know how to sell it to people. And it just didn't please me. And I wanted to write different stories. I was getting interested in songwriting. I was listening to Joni Mitchell, John Lennon, Elton John, James Taylor, Cat Stevens, a lot of Stevie Wonder, Donny Hathaway, and Marvin Gaye. So I started feeling emotions from other music that I couldn't feel in hip-hop, that no one had ever made me feel in hip-hop. And I wanted to be able to use words to make people feel emotions. That's when I started really focusing on alternative forms of hip-hop or future soul, and trying to write different kinds of songs.
Now, how would you, maybe this is kind of difficult to say, but what is behind your music? Or maybe a different question, why do you create music?
I have a couple of reasons why I create music. There's one reason is I can't not create music. It's really difficult to not create music. I kid you not, I'll be on an airplane, like sitting right next to somebody, and an idea comes to me and I feel so trapped because I just want to sing really loud because I've got this idea, and if I lose it, millions of people will miss out on this opportunity to hear this idea. And that's no joke. That's the story of Wake Me Up. I was on an airplane flying from Geneva to LA, and I had this concept, and I just thought to myself, I need to write this down. I'm sure I had a melody to it that was different from the one that you hear now, but at the very least I wrote the words in my phone. But sometimes I turn on my phone and turn on the record button. I start singing to myself on the airplane, and I get strange looks at people like, what are you doing on the phone on the airplane? supposed to turn that off. But no, I'm not talking to nobody. I'm talking to myself. Actually, I'm talking to the world. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen this. We were in the elevator, and he just started singing, and it was, it was great, but it was surprising. You mentioned "Wake Me Up," and you said the version we kind of all know today is different than the one, the original version. How did that whole thing happen? Maybe you can tell us the story of that whole.
Sure, song. Yeah. A lot of my fans think it's strange that I would do a dance song, but
I think so.
Historically, like my progression has included a whole lot of different genres, and so for me it was no problem. When I got the phone call, Avicii was looking for a soul artist to sing on his album, and he asked Mike Shinoda, who he was working with in a session, if he knew anybody, and Mike suggested you should call Aloe Blacc. Like that's a soul artist to sing on your album. So Avicii contacted me, and we went to the studio to record a couple of songs. One song was written by Mac Davis, who was a very accomplished songwriter, used to write for Elvis Presley and others. And another song we just kind of wrote at the moment in the studio. And so that gave me a real understanding about how Avicii works, and he got an understanding about how I work. And a couple weeks later, he was in the studio with Mike Einziger from Incubus. And Mike had come up with a nice guitar chord progression that they felt was something to build on. And they were supposed to end their session, because Avicii had a session with me to finish some other things. But Mike said, nah, just invite Aloe to the studio and we'll finish this one. So I came to the studio with this idea in mind, like the strongest song idea that I could bring to them. I don't remember the melody I had on the airplane, but I at least wrote down the lyrics. And this is something that I think is profound enough to bring to these two guys who I feel like are respected artists in their particular industry and genres. So I don't want to go to a studio session empty-handed. And I got to the session, and I'm sitting with Mike, and Avicii was like in the corner as Mike was on the guitar, and I just told him, what do you think of this? And he played the guitar, and I started singing a melody to what he was playing, right? Because for me, like almost any chord structure it's like a doorway to melody. And for some reason, I fall through that doorway with melodies, and then the melodies suggest words. But this time I already have the words. So that was half the battle. And I sang to him, "Wake me up when it's all over, when I'm wiser and I'm older." And he said, "That's great, that's fantastic." I said, "But I'm not sure about this other line. All this time I was finding myself. I didn't know I was lost." And he goes, "That's perfect. Like, just put it together. That's a great chorus." So I put it together, and that was the basic beginning of the song. I continued to finish writing the lyrics while Mike was recording his guitar into Pro Tools. So he's there recording his guitar into Pro Tools. I'm finishing the lyrics, and then all of a sudden, as soon as he was done recording, I was also done with my lyrics. And so I said, "Perfect, let's go in the booth." I went in the booth. I recorded the lyrics to what he had put into Pro Tools. And I did a bunch of different takes, and Avicii was like, "Okay, Aloe, I really like take number 3. Why don't you do that one again? Or I really like take number 7. There was something you did at the end. I want you to do that again." So it was really a nice collaborative effort, and we gave that acoustic recording to Avicii, and he made a fantastic dance hit out of it. Yeah. So I always appreciated that acoustic recording, because when I drove home listening to that CD before Avicii made his mix of it, I felt like it was a powerful song. I felt like I was doing something that would make my heroes smile. I felt like that. I didn't know if it would make them smile. I didn't know if it would make anybody else in the world smile. But I just, when I'm making songs, I know if I feel good, that's all that matters.
So it actually wasn't your intention to make a dance hit at first?
It's not my intention to make a dance hit. It's my intention to make an amazing song. We can remix it any way. We can do a salsa mix. We can do a reggae mix, which Avicii's done. We can do a broken beat mix or a house mix. And in this case, an acoustic song became a house mix. And that was the vehicle for the world to become aware of this song. Any other way, I don't know if it would have had that kind of presence. You know?
What does "wake me up" mean? I mean, what do we need to be waking up from, and into what? What are we waking up to?
Well, there are so many issues. But for me, the most important thing is harmony. We need to be woken up to be a more harmonious and loving people. And I know we all feel like we are. I feel like I am. But I feel like there are others who may be just a bit mistaken about how loving and harmonious they are. Namely, world leaders who are oppressing their people. In corporate leaders without compassion. I mean, there's a lot of things to be woken up about. And "Wake Me Up" for me, lyrically, is about living in a dream. I feel like my life is so good that I just get to sing every day and make people happy that I don't want to be woken up from this dream. But in a lot of ways, you can interpret a song in many different ways. And I chose visually to interpret it with, in my video, the struggle of immigrants in the United States specifically, but I know immigration is an issue around the world. You know, North Africans moving across the Mediterranean, Cubans moving in the Caribbean to Florida. It's happening everywhere. So I feel like regardless of what my interpretation is, there are many ways for us to see it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's all about waking up to ourselves, you know, starting with yourself and then kind of taking it to your neighbor, your friend, your family, and then from there, hopefully trying to make a change. I think, is that kind of, do you want to start kind of a change, or I don't want to say revolution, but do you want to affect people like that?
Yeah, I mean, revolution's not a bad word,
right,
but it's not necessarily the word I would use. What I would like to do is just suggest that you could be a little bit more harmonious and loving. Here's one way. How do we do that, Aloe? How do we be more loving and more harmonious? Well, let's say you take the opportunity to choose a fair trade product from the store rather than something that doesn't have a fair trade symbol on it. Because you know, if it's fair trade, at the very least, somebody's doing some work to identify in the supply chain that there's no slavery, that there's no abuse, that there's no issues in terms of the way that the product was made and delivered. I think that's one act that you can take to be more harmonious. Just one simple act. But it's definitely not easy, and you know, the marketplace doesn't make it easy for us to be fair to the rest of the world.
Yeah, I think it's you know, people think, oh, I'm just one person, I can't really do anything, what can I do? But you know, as you just said, there's many little things that we could do. You know, going back to little things, I think everyone here knows your previous hit, or one of your previous hits, I Need a Dollar.
Right.
And, that's, it's very symbolic, $1. What can $1 do? You explained it to me back in the day. It's all about a chance. And how do you see that kind of giving people a chance maybe to wake up?
Oh, man. This is, for me, music is my chance to give people a voice. So I get a lot of attention from media and from radio, and I want to be able to take my voice and let people be heard. Recently I went to Ghana to witness firsthand the effects of malaria on the population. Malaria No More UK gave me this opportunity to see it so that I could tell more people about how they could help make an effective change. My parents come from Panama. And in Panama in the early 1900s, before there was real progress in building an infrastructure, there was a huge problem with malaria. But after building the canal, in order to get the canal built, there were so many people dying that the government had to do something to stop malaria. So eventually they did, and it's about effectively changing the infrastructure. Mm-hmm. So Malaria No More asked me if I could help them to build awareness. And they said in particular there was Deutsche Bank, which was giving away £750 million to £750,000, I'm sorry, to an organization in order for them to operate. And they said, all we have to do is convince the Deutsche Bank employees to vote for us, and we'll win £750,000. And I thought, well, what do you need to do? They said, well, usually we just write a letter that goes to their email, and then they'll vote for us. And I said, well, then that's easy. I'll just go to my piano and sing a song to them. And it worked. They won £750,000 from Deutsche Bank to operate their business to help end malaria in Ghana. That's how I am able to wake people up. Mm-hmm. That's how I get to do it. And I'm going to continue to do it in every way that I can.
And that song you sang was?
Wake Me Up.
Wake Me Up. I think we're getting closer to the end. Maybe there's musicians here today or watching. I think for me, what's interesting to see your development, you told us a story kind of about coincidences, like, oh, you met this guy or you went on to. Do you believe in coincidences? Do you believe that we are just floating out there and things happen, or do you think that we're all kind of on some kind of path on our own direction? How do you see that?
I do believe that there are a lot of coincidences, but and largely because I feel like most of us aren't really marching on a specific plan. So we allow these coincidences to happen, and I've lived my life in this way a lot. And a lot of coincidences, for some reason, have been positive and helped me get to where I am today. But there is, for me, in moving toward the future, a plan, because I can see how, potentially just relying on coincidences may not be the most efficient way of getting to achieve my goals. One of my major goals is to achieve the Songwriters Hall of Fame. If I can do that, I feel like I've done a lot. The other is to either match or exceed Michael Jackson's charitable giving, which means I need to sell a lot of records. And in order to sell a lot of records, I can't just let coincidences happen. I got a plan. So, my goal is to work at my songwriting and even my business, how I conduct my business.
So you don't feel satisfied? You're still working every day on kind of perfecting your skills? Or do you rely on talent? Every
day perfecting skills. Every day I'm working this puzzle of how do I put words together to draw emotion out of people in a way that's going to affect them strongly, so that I become not just an unnamed voice on the radio so that I become a voice that is their friend, that they care to hear, whether he's singing, speaking, acting. It doesn't matter that what I'm doing, that I become a friend of my audience and that they care about what I care about.
Yeah, I think that's a cool way to put it, become a friend of the audience. So speaking about your plan, what is the plan? What's next for Aloe Blacc?
And next, well,
or what's happening right now?
Yeah, the music is out. Lift Your Spirit is the album that's available now, and I'm going to be auditioning soon for a film. I try to play a small role in the James Brown story, which, James Brown is one of my idols, and I appreciate his music, but also his business savvy, and he really changed the music industry in a positive way. So I'm hoping to do the same.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned Michael Jackson. I came across a performance you did, I think here in Berlin, where you performed Billie Jean in a very unique kind of acoustic setting. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that for a couple minutes.
Yeah. I was approached by an art conglomerate here called Made in Berlin, and they put together a fantastic art space where all kinds of different curated activities happen. And in this particular one, I was invited to sing with a string quintet, and the music that they played was an interpretation of music from my Good Things album, songs like Dollar and Loving You's Killing Me. And there was a third interpretation that happened, or another interpretation that happened by an artist by the name of Jabo, who painted his interpretation of the string quintet's interpretation of my song. So it was just like a succession of inspiration. And we had a fantastic night where we performed to an audience sort of like this, just acoustic with strings. And it's online, actually, right? Yeah, it's online for everyone to see. It's a wonderful presentation with Made. And I think it's a fantastic moment that I had in Berlin that, for me, will live forever.
Well, I think I had my chance to ask what I wanted to ask him. Now it's up to you guys to, ask him. He doesn't bite. But
I don't bite. That's a hip hop rule. It's a hip hop rule.
You said that before. So, if there's any questions, please just raise your hand, and the guys will come over with the mic. I think back.
Okay.
Which of contemporary artists do you admire?
There's a fantastic artist from Spain named Blacc. If you have not heard of her, I suggest you look her up right now. You can put it in your phone as a remembrance. Buika. Her voice is fantastic, and she's singing in Spanish, so if you don't know Spanish, it doesn't even matter. There's a fantastic artist from the US named Gregory Porter. I consider him one of the best voices in jazz and R&B right now. A great singer-songwriter from England named Michael Kiwanuka. Brilliant. I put these guys at the top of my list, and just a couple nights ago, I was here in Berlin. I went to an intimate performance by an artist named Fetsum, F-E-T-S-U-M. You have to hear him if you live in Berlin, and you have to hear him live and without amplification. It's the best way to hear him. Trust me, you will not be disappointed.
I agree. Yep, back there.
If you would be lost on an island and had only 5 songs to choose for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Right. Okay. Number 1, we're going to start with, there's a song called The Parasite by Eugene McDaniels. Eugene McDaniels was a fantastic soul singer. He was also sort of a psychedelic soul jazz artist. And he wrote very political music. The Nixon administration banned his albums from the shelves. So it was very difficult for him to become popular, but I found it, and I'm going to make him as popular as possible. That was one song. Another song would be the Donny Hathaway version of A Song for You. It's written by Leon Russell, originally performed by Leon Russell, but Donny Hathaway's version to me is the most beautiful version of the song, and pretty much the one that everybody around me knows. Another song would be the Pedro Navarra. This is by Pedro Navaja, sorry. This is by Ruben Blades. He's a Panamanian salsero. He sings beautiful salsa music. And this is a song I grew up listening to. My parents played over and over and over again. And I'll never forget it. It has so many different movements and pieces to it. I would probably pick one hip hop song, and that would be from Nas, and the song is "The World Is Yours." The first hip hop album I purchased with my own money was a cassette by Nas, the Illmatic cassette. And the last song that I would take with me would be a song from my last album, "Mama Hold My Hand," because this is a very important song to me, my relationship with my mother and my grandmother.
At what age did you decide to become a musician?
Age 9, I started playing the trumpet. I didn't want to sit in the regular class with all the other kids doing music programming that was just kind of boring. And so I asked my mom if I could join the school band, and she got me a trumpet, and I started playing with the other musicians in school. It eventually increased my knowledge about how to read music, write music, play music, and hip-hop took me in a completely different direction, but I was lucky to have a real musical foundation.
So in the beginning of the video, there was written that the song is inspired by a lot of stories. Where did you listen to these stories, and why did you choose these stories, and how did it inspire you?
Okay. In the beginning of the video, it says that the video is inspired by the stories. These stories come from millions of people who are trying to find a better life in the United States. As I said before, my parents are from Panama. They left Panama to move to the US so they could find work, because in Panama, there was no civil rights movement. Some people don't recognize, but there are black folks throughout all of the Americas, and North America, the United States in particular, had a civil rights movement. But Panama didn't, Colombia did not, Venezuela did not, Brazil did not, but there are still blacks that are being affected from old mentalities. So it's very difficult for them to get jobs in Panama. So they moved to the US and they were able to get work. And this is what the video is about, immigration to find work. It's what immigration is generally about, trying to find a better life for your family. And that's why I think it's a really important topic, because I wouldn't be here to talk to you today if the system didn't work for my parents. I'm just trying to figure out how we can keep the discussion going so the system can work for millions of other parents with the same dreams for their kids.
We got time for 2 more. So, right here.
Will we ever hear you singing in Spanish?
You will. As a matter of fact, if you go on iTunes, you can hear it now. On my the 2 albums ago, Shine Through album, I did a Spanish version of John Legend's Ordinary People. Do you remember the song? And there's also another Spanish song that I did from my childhood that I covered. So you definitely hear me singing in Spanish. And in the future as well, yes, you will.
Last one.
Mm-hmm.
So hearing which musical career you had from the styles from trumpet over hip hop and everything, do you feel that now you've settled into your style, or do you think you're still evolving into something maybe completely different in the future?
Very, very nice question. I feel like I'm finally reaching the voice that I want to present for the rest of my life. I've tried everything, and not everything worked. But now I think I know how to use my voice. I wasn't really trained to be a singer. I had to learn it and it took me a few albums to figure it out. But seeing the tremendous response around the world to Wake Me Up, and nobody knowing that it's my voice, is a real indicator that this is where I belong. Thank you.
Aloe, thank you very much. Now we all know that, you know, it's him, that's his voice on the song that we all know. Thank you for your time and your questions. Aloe, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you.